All right, guys. I'm gonna explain why I gotta learn classical Arabic, right? And why it's gonna probably be my next language, or Arabic in general is gonna be why it's my next language that I'm gonna tackle after I refine French and Japanese. So I think it really has to come down to, I just realized that if I want to truly be a complete Muslim, I have to understand the direct words of Allah. And me knowing all these languages, I know how to learn languages. So like I have the ability to learn classical Arabic and to master Arabic at the highest levels. Because I've already done it with like Japanese. So like I know the process and I know how to do it. It's just a matter of execution, right? And a lot of people, a lot of Muslims specifically, right? They don't end up learning classical Arabic to the level that most imams do, because imams go to school for like 10 years, like 7 years, to learn classical Arabic and everything about the Quran and everything. It's like, so people think, most Muslims think that like it takes a lifetime for you to be able to read the Quran and understand everything, which is completely false. Because I have the hidden keys to learn a language like this, right? What is that? Immersion and Anki. And part of what makes classical Arabic very difficult is the grammar, the syntax, the grammar, like not necessarily the vocab, but the grammar is really hard. But here's the thing. When you combine immersion and learning, right, the complexity of grammar is irrelevant. So for me, like, I don't care how hard, classical Arabic grammar is, because I'm going to be able to acquire like this. Because it's not my conscious brain that's going to figure it out, it's my subconscious brain that's going to figure it out through lots of exposure. I just have to worry about, okay, do I know all the words? Because the biggest problem with languages is the vocab, right? Because once you know all the words in the Quran, once you know all the words in classical Arabic texts, then it's easy to kind of parse the grammar. Then it's easy to kind of like, okay, like how does this grammar work? Because now you know all the words and the rough meanings, right? So for me, like grammar complexity is never a problem because that gets solved by itself with immersion. So, but a lot of Muslims don't know about this. A lot of people don't know how to learn languages. And, that's like the unfortunate part is like, there's a lot of Muslims that do everything they do in the Quran. They pray on time, they create a family, they complete their deen, they get married, they raise a righteous family, they do the pilgrimage, they fast, they do zakah, right? They do all these things, yet they can't understand classical Arabic. Or like they know how to recite it, but they don't know the precise exact meanings of every phrase, every word, nuanced. And I think part of it has to do with classical Arabic being an ancient language. And it's not used today. So even if you are a native speaker of Arabic and you speak one of the Arabic dialects, whether it be Egyptian dialect, Palestinian dialect, right? That does not mean that you'll be able to automatically understand and be able to read classical Arabic texts. Because you have to think about like classical Arabic as like a completely different language than the dialects. Even though they do share the same core vocabulary, they do overlap. Just the classical Arabic grammar is so much harder, much more complex vocabulary that you have to learn. Like there's just so many more words you gotta learn, even if you've mastered the dialect. Even if you're completely fluent and native level in Arabic dialect and you're native, it's not gonna really transfer to classical Arabic because classical Arabic requires more investment. And it's funny because there's a lot of imams and there's a lot of like sheikhs, right, that actually try to learn Arabic, like classical Arabic, through the traditional formal way of doing it, right? Which is what they do in school, right? Which is like literally one of the most ineffective ways to learn a language. It's like they're treating classical Arabic like a foreign language when they could have just they could have just done immersion, which is the same way they learn their dialect language. That's what I plan to do with Arabic. Is I plan to actually learn the dialect of the language first and then go on to classical Arabic. But I'm gonna learn the dialect of Arabic through immersion and Anki, right? And that's like the way you guys learned your own language. If you're a native speaker of Arabic, you learned Arabic through immersion, right? Now, of course, I'm gonna get really good really fast with Anki because that's what Anki is. That's the power of Anki. Anki is absolutely freaking busted. Because with Anki, you can just like 2 times the speed of your immersion. I mean, 2 times the speed of your progress in a language. Even though immersion does all the work, it's like when you add Anki with it, it's just like you just throw gasoline on fire. It's crazy. But if you guys are trying to learn Arabic, like just treat it exactly like how you learned your dialect Arabic. It's not that much different. And plus, you're not starting from scratch when you read classical Arabic because you know some of the words. You just gotta basically, start reading more. Just start reading the texts, right? Like just start a little bit every day. Just pick up like an easier classical Arabic text. Just pick it up and just start memorizing every single word. You know what I mean? And then like if you made like 10 new cards a day from Anki, and then eventually over time, like it'll get easier and easier and easier, and eventually you'll be able to read the text a lot more smoothly. And then, if you want to master, that's a different story, but like, then you can like spend like another year doing extensive reading on like, that type of language. And then you eventually get to the point where like you get the same level to where like an imam is, right? In terms of understanding of the actual Arabic in the Quran. So it takes effort, but it's like, it's completely doable, and you have to incorporate the correct techniques. But for me, at least, like I have no excuse, man. I have no excuse to not learn classical Arabic because I know how to actually learn the language, like really fast. So like, if I don't do it, it's like, who's gonna do it then? You know what I mean? So, and also like, it's also a way for me to be closer to Allah, because I can read the Quran in English, but it's not the same Quran that's written in Arabic. It's not the same. Those are Allah's words. When it's in Arabic, that's the language that Allah chose to speak to you in. So there's significance in there already. Like the Quran is just a good, like the Quran in itself is a good enough reason to learn the entire classical Arabic language. Of course, there's a lot of things I want to, consume outside of Quran. Like, for example, I want to consume like some of the historical texts. I want to consume like, Thousand Arabian Nights, Adventures of Sinbad, like the kind of fictional stories of classical Arabic. Like I want to actually read those. So like, but even if you're like just wanted to learn classical Arabic for the sake of learning the Quran, that's a good enough reason because it's the Quran. And I think I can be the perfect Muslim. I can do everything else. I can fast, I can pray, I can do everything that's said in the deen. But I think if I want to have the highest act of worship towards Allah, I got to learn the language. And learn it to the highest levels, like not just the dialect level, right? Like learn classical Arabic, highest levels of Arabic. Read like super complex texts in the language. Because it's only when I have that ability, which is not knowledge. People think it's knowledge. People think like learning a language is knowledge. It's not knowledge at all. It's ability. Once I have that ability, then I'll be able to basically effortlessly understand what Allah's talking to me. Like when Allah's talking to me in classical Arabic, and I'm his servant, I just like understand it. Like what good is a servant that can't understand can't understand the words of the master? Imagine if Allah's talking to you, right? And he's talking to you in classical Arabic, but you can't even understand classical Arabic because you never studied classical Arabic, like because you don't have the ability to understand classical Arabic. Like, what? Like imagine Allah just like, decided to talk to you in classical Arabic, which is the language that he's talked to you in the Quran. I mean, Allah can talk to you in any language, but he chose classical Arabic for a reason. That's why he preserved it, in classical Arabic. All right? So there's a reason why. There's significance there already. But imagine like, Allah's trying to talk to you in your dream, or like, Allah's trying to talk to you literally, like on the Day of Judgment. He's talking to you in classical Arabic. And then you're just like, I don't understand what you're saying. It's a bunch of gibberish. It's like, dude, come on. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like you have to learn classical Arabic, guys. I mean, for me, I feel the need to do it. I don't know if most Muslims feel this way. Like, I don't know, because I don't really talk to Muslims about this. This is like only my thoughts. But at least for me, I feel the strong need and urgency for me to learn Arabic and learn it to the highest levels, right? So that's the thing, guys. And it's all for me to get closer to Allah, right? Because I want to be able to access the taste of the Quran. See, when it comes to languages, I already know like 3. And with each language, like French, when I watch French YouTube, the slang and the people, the way that people speak, the way of thinking, it's like a different feeling, it's a different taste. And even if you translated these phrases in French into English, it wouldn't have the same feeling and taste. If you guys understand the Quran, like in Arabic, you understand what I'm saying. When you watch anime in Japanese, there's a certain flavor of Japanese that's only in Japanese anime. Like some people think that they know anime because they watched it in English subtitles. If you watched anime in English subtitles, you've never felt anime. You don't know what anime feels like or tastes like. Because the only way to get the true essence of feeling and taste of Japanese in the anime, in the context of anime, you have to actually learn the language. That's an unavoidable step you have to take to feel anime, to feel the taste of the language that's used in anime. Right? If you want to be able to understand like French slang and French people, if you want the taste and the feeling of French, you have to learn the language. And no amount of translations, no amount of essays like written trying to explain the feeling or convey the taste, it's not going to do good. Like you're not going to get it. Like you will only get it until you learn the language. And the same with the Quran. Like no amount of explanations in English or translations is going to replicate the same feeling and taste of the Quran, of Arabic, understanding it in Arabic. There's a certain feeling, I know there's a certain feeling and taste of Arabic that I will not be able to truly feel and taste until I learn the language. And I want to be able to taste and feel Allah's words and actually feel it. See, when it comes to language, it's not about like linguistic, like grammar and vocab. You're obtaining a cultural aspect to language. Like there's a cultural aspect, or there's a cultural gain. Like there's a cultural benefit you gain from learning a new language. It's not just about learning all these systematic grammar drills and all these like, useless linguistic complexities. It's not about that. It's about gaining the taste and the flavor of the language, which comes with the culture. So I know that like, if I get to the point where I understand the Quran, I'm going to be able to feel and taste Allah's words, which is completely different than reading it in English. Because reading it in English, I'm not really getting a true taste. Because when you watch anime in Japanese without subtitles, it's a completely different taste. It's a completely way different like feeling that's being portrayed in anime. Or like when you watch when you listen to French people speak right on the streets, like oh je m'en bats les couilles, oh ça m'a cassé les couilles là. It's just like when you translate je m'en bats les couilles in English, it sounds very vulgar and aggressive. But when you say it in French, it just sounds so funny. It's just like oh ouais je m'en bats les couilles là. It's like it just sounds so funny. And there's a certain feeling and there's a certain taste that you can never get. You have to learn the language. You have to acquire the language. So that's why for me, I have to learn Arabic, right? It's like an inner calling. It's an inner calling for me to actually learn language to the highest levels. So, but for me, before I learn Arabic, I'm gonna have to first like completely at least get to a point where like I'm undeniably freaking fluent in French and Japanese. Even though my Japanese is really good already, I still wanna reach my Japanese is like literally 90% there. I just need an extra 10%. That's going to require like another like 3 months of like hard effort for me to be undeniably native in Japanese. Like I'm at a point now where like I could be undeniably like native, and surpass even some native speakers in vocab, right? But I'm really close. It just took a lot of effort, but I'm getting there. Now with French, I just want to be able to master the spoken language of French. So like I still got to learn like a little bit more like slang and formal expressions that are used in spoken speech, but are like, more sophisticated, right? So there's a lot of sophisticated vocabulary I'm still trying to acquire from French, but I already have the layout for French. So for me, like I'm gonna have to just grind a little bit more to refine French and refine Japanese. Once I refine these two languages, it's gonna be deep, embedded into my subconscious brain and long-term memory, so that when I actually go tackle Arabic for real, I'm not really gonna forget Japanese or French because it's already gonna be so embedded in my brain. But that's why I like learning languages, Like learning languages allows you to access the taste and the culture and the feeling that you get from languages, right? And it's not something you can replicate. And that's not something you can just like try to understand through just reading an article, an essay about how this feeling is felt. Like you can describe a feeling, but it's not the same as actually feeling the feeling. You guys understand? You can describe a feeling, but it is completely different than actually experiencing the feeling. That's the same with the Quran. It's like you can describe what it feels like to taste Allah's words, but it's way different than actually experiencing it for yourself. So that's why for me, like if I want to experience the Quran and the words of Allah and its complexities and its beauty, I'm going to have to learn the Arabic language. So that's why for me, like I'm going to do it. And I don't know if a lot of Muslims like want to do this. Like, I mean, most Muslims might think that's impossible to learn Arabic to the highest language. I mean, to the highest levels, because it's like literally most people don't even know how to learn a language, like to a conversational fluent level, let alone how you're going to reach Arabic to like a classical Arabic, like extremely high literary level. Like there's just no way. Like most people think like it's just nearly impossible and not even feasible for most Muslims to do. But like I said, I have the secret ingredient right? Immersion, Anki. Combining these two, you can get to classical Arabic and even master the dialects within like a couple years. Most people think it'll take you like 30 years, 40 years to master Arabic. No, you don't need that much. You just need, like, for me, like, if I were to go like hardcore, it might take a year for me to do Egyptian Arabic. Like, if I wanted to master like a dialect, it'll take me a year to learn like 10,000 words. And maybe for classical Arabic, it'll probably require an additional 10,000 words. And then for the third year, I'll basically just be reading like tafsir, or like I'll be reading like historical texts and just refining the extra 5%, which is like another 5,000 words. But like at that point, like, I'm not about focusing on the language, I'm focusing on the content that classical Arabic has to offer. Because it's like, once you have the ability to read classical Arabic, then all you got to do is just read the texts. Read about Islam in the actual language itself. Right? Then that's all you have left. Then you have like unprecedented knowledge at that point, right? But you have to have the ability too. If you want to access the knowledge that's in classical Arabic, in the Islamic text and history, you have to first cultivate the ability, right? Now, it's going to take a very long time to cultivate the ability, but once you have the ability, then you can use it forever, right? Then you can use it to read like books in classical Arabic. You can use it to read the Quran and understand it, what it says, like, you know what I mean? So once you have the ability, then you can go to the knowledge, but you have to first cultivate the ability first. So yeah, but that's like what I plan to do, guys. And I don't know what you guys think. Like, you know, if you're a Muslim, let me know what you guys think. But I think at least for me, I have to learn Arabic. For me, I can't afford to be a Muslim and not understand the words of Allah in its original form. I just can't afford that, right? So that's how I'm going to learn it. So anyway, inshallah, right? That's inshallah. Everything's inshallah, guys. Everything's inshallah. But yeah, assalamu alaikum.